Workers' Compensation, Chapter 16. So originally, it was a lawsuit between a injured employee and their employer if they got injured on the job. There were several common law defenses that were put in place that the employer would use to prevent the employee from being able to collect on any of those claims that they were making. So in this case, the fellow servant rule, this is talking about when somebody says, hey, Johnny can do the job without getting injured, so why can't you do the job without getting injured? That is what the fellow servant rule is discussing. The other ones, contributory negligence, assumption of risk. Hey, you knew what kind of job this was prior to getting into it, so you took on the risk knowing that the job was going to be dangerous. So those types of things were successfully used by employers originally, and therefore a lot of employees would not put through these lawsuits because they weren't likely to be successful with this. So they realized that a system of benefits needed to be put in place to protect workers in the early 1900s. The laws were primarily elective or optional at first, allowing them to pursue the case outside of the workers' compensation law or to use the fixed benefit remedies provided under the law, also known as the statutory benefits. And so compulsory laws, which are going to mandate that the exclusive remedy was to be provided under the workers' compensation law, was later enacted by almost every state. This established a form of absolute liability that required the compensation for injured workers regardless of their fault or negligence. So some states nowadays require you to purchase the insurance through the state's plan. These are called monopolistic states. Outside of that, those monopolistic states, you'll buy these plans through private insurance companies or insurers. Employers are going to pay the premiums to cover their employees, and the state's going to provide the benefits under workers' compensation. Employees are going to be defined by what they do. So most independent contractors will qualify for workers' compensation benefits. The tests that they're going to ask are going to be if the employer exercises control over the person performing the task, if the character of the work being performed is consistent with the nature of the business, if the person is paid a wage or some other type of compensation by the employer, if the business has the right to hire or fire the person, or if the business furnishes the materials necessary for the person to perform their task. You're generally going to be considered an employee for workers' compensation purposes. Now, there are exemptions to workers' compensation, right? So in Texas, this is going to include some farm and ranch workers, casual laborers, domestic employees, those that are day laborers, and employees that are already covered under federal workers' compensation insurance, and any newly hired employee that rejects coverage within 5 days of being hired is also going to be exempted under workers' compensation. Now, Texas is the only state in the country that still has what we call an elective law, meaning that you do not have to have workers' compensation insurance in the state of Texas. However, the employer does lose those common law defenses, and they are required to register with the Division of Workers' Compensation, DWC, which is a division of the Texas Department of Insurance. Now, these policies are broken into two parts. Part one is going to cover workers' compensation. Part two is going to be employer practices liability insurance, EPLI. And part one is going to be split into 5 subsections. The policy, this is going to be the information or deck page. Number 2, who is the insured. Number 3, the workers' compensation law that's in effect. Number 4, the state. Number 5, the locations within the state. Other states' insurance, you're going to get automatic coverage for new or incidental operations in other states, excluding those monopolistic states, for them on an automatic and temporary basis. for subject to certain conditions and time limits. Benefits that are covered by workers' compensation. They're going to cover medical benefits. This is going to be any injury covered by workers' compensation is entitled to all healthcare reasonably required for the injury and paid immediately. Benefits are based on the nature of the injury and continue as long as deemed medically necessary. Therefore, they can be theoretically unlimited or lifetime benefits. There are no benefits paid for pain and suffering, mental anguish, or cosmetic surgery solely for aesthetic purposes. Income benefits, disability income replacement is going to be paid on a weekly basis to replace a portion of the wages. They're going to look at the average wage that you were earning for the 13 weeks prior to the injury. And the benefits will not start until the 8th day, meaning that your first week of benefits are going to be paid actually on the second week. And then on the third week, you're going to get paid back for the first week and for that third week. And then it goes back to a schedule for 1 week at a time from that point forward. The insurance carrier under death and burial or survivor benefits will pay death benefits to the legal beneficiary if a compensable injury to an employee results in a death. These are paid weekly, and there is no waiting period. If the death of the employee results from a compensable injury, the insurance carrier will pay to the person who incurred the cost of the burial, the lesser of the actual cost incurred, or up to $10,000. The second or subsequent injury fund was enacted by Texas, which is funded by unclaimed death benefits maintained by the state, which are paid for a maximum of 364 weeks or 7 years. These funds are designed to pay for any additional benefits that may be required when an employee with a previous injury or disability, whether work-related or not, suffers another injury that causes disability to be more serious than if there had been no prior disability. So an example here, workers' compensation will not pay for this, so this is why this is necessary. An employee with only one arm loses the use of a second arm. The resulting disability might be much worse, usually resulting in permanent total disability. And without the second injury fund, the employers would be subject to the additional liability imposed by such injuries and would not have any incentive to hire the disabled employee. Vocational rehabilitation. So this is covered by the state of Texas, but it is not part of workers' compensation. This is available to anybody getting supplemental income, gets referred by the state to retrain and get them back to work sooner if they can retrain them on a different type of skill or job. The payment of benefits are going to be no later than 15 days after the insurance carrier receives written notice of an injury. The carrier will begin the payment of the benefits. Work-related versus non-work-related. So a lot of times on the state test, they're going to ask questions about what is and what isn't covered by workers' compensation. So any bodily injury and occupational disease arising out of or during employment is going to be covered, but no ordinary diseases like flu, COVID, diabetes, stroke are going to be covered by the workers' compensation. Other excluded things from an injury standpoint is going to be any injuries that occur to and from work, even in a company vehicle, are not going to be covered by the workers' compensation. Any act of God is not going to be covered by workers' compensation insurance unless, for some reason, the employer put that employee into further harm's way by their actions. Workers' compensation is not going to cover in the case of intoxication. So the first thing that happens usually on workplace injuries and accidents is they're going to test you for alcohol and or drugs because if they can find that you have those in your system, then they will be able to exclude that and not pay it out. Any self-inflicted injuries will not be able to be paid out under workers' compensation. If you've ever had to wear safety glasses at a work site, you know this. Any willful failure to follow safety precautions will be a cause for them to exclude the injury. So if you forget to put those glasses on and you do that several times and your boss writes you up for it, that reason for them writing you up for it is to establish a pattern so that they wouldn't have to pay just in case you got injured because you weren't wearing your safety glasses. Activities that are not part of the job are not going to be covered. So if you got any voluntary games or anything like that, like a three-legged race or something like that on the side of the workplace, even though it's on work property, is not going to be covered because it is voluntary. And then any injuries that are caused by third parties are not going to be able to be covered as well. This is situations like a spouse coming to visit their husband at work, or domestic violence type situations, somebody just going crazy, going postal. Terrorism events are not able to be covered under workers' compensation as well. Statute of limitations, the employee must notify the employer of an injury no later than 30 days after the date of which the injury occurred. They do have up to a year to file the claim, though. Legal beneficiary has 1 year from the date of the claim to date of the injury to file the death claim. The employer is required to report the injury to the insurance company and the insurer within 8 days of being notified. Premium determination is going to be for based on the nature of the business, what type of business they are, and they're going to have a job classification rate for each $100 of payroll, and it's going to be adjusted by modification, experience modification factors, and if the total goes over $5,000 monthly. The experience ratings will raise up or down to encourage employers to create that safe work environment. Part 2 of the workers' compensation policy is going to be for the employer's liability. It's going to cover things that are not covered for people that are seeking damages outside the workers' compensation laws. The most common types of situations that are going to be covered with this part are going to be exempt employments. Back to who's an employee. So if you had somebody that wasn't allowed to be covered under workers' compensation, they could be making a claim, but you would be covered under employer liability. It is possible to unknowingly have an illegal employment, either a minor or somebody that doesn't have proper work authorization, like an illegal alien. There can be a lawsuit brought for loss of consortium that is not paid out by workers' compensation. Loss of consortium is the ability to make sexual congress or intimacy with your partner. And if you cannot do that anymore, you can sue for that. And that can be covered not under workers' compensation, but under employer's liability. And then in the case of a intentional unsafe contact by the employer, gross negligence, you can have a lawsuit for that, and that can be covered by employer's liability insurance. All right, so time to go through review of this section. Number 1, if an employee had been injured and impaired at a previous job, benefits under workers' compensation for injuries at a new job are partially paid for by whom? A, the employer's health insurance, B, the insurance commissioner, C, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or D, the second injury fund. In this case, it's going to be D, the second injury fund. Number 2, who pays the premium for workers' compensation insurance? A, employees, B, employees and employers and employees proportionally, C, employers, or D, the Workers' Compensation Board. In this case, this is going to be just the employers, C. Number 3, which of the following benefits are not paid under workers' compensation laws? A, medical costs, B, mental anguish, C, physical rehabilitation, or D, disability income. In this case, it's going to be B, mental anguish. Number 4, in Texas, workers' compensation laws apply A, to most employees, except for those that are specifically excluded by law, B, only to employees in hazardous occupations, C, only to employees who work full-time, or D, to no employers. So in this case, the correct answer is going to be to most employees except those specifically excluded by law. A. Number 5, in Texas, workers' compensation coverage is A, compulsory, B, required, C, elective, or D, reciprocal. In this case, elective is the most correct answer, C. Number 6, when an injured employee can only be paid under workers' compensation, it is called A, indemnity, B, medical benefits, C, exclusive remedy, or D, compulsory. In this case, it's going to be C, exclusive remedy. Number 7, who may have a valid workers' compensation claim? A, an employee who was injured getting out of the car in the company's parking lot. B, a wife who was injured while visiting her husband's job job site. C, an employee who had an epileptic seizure on the job. Or D, an employee who was injured in a car accident while driving to work in a company truck. So A, an employee who is injured getting out of a car in the company parking lot. The key here is being on the company parking lot, and that would cause a valid worker compensation claim. B, the wife visiting would not have coverage. An employee who has an epileptic seizure, you can put in heart attack, a whole bunch of different things here. Things that are natural to the and not caused by the employment or by the work at the job would not be able to be covered under workers' compensation. And then injured in a car accident, D, while driving to work in a company truck. To or from work, even in a company vehicle, is not covered by workers' compensation. Number 8, an injured employee must notify his employer within how long after the injury to receive their benefits? A, 24 hours, B, 8 days, C, 30 days, or D, 1 year. So number 8, this is going to be 30 days. Number 9, all the following benefits are covered by workers' compensation in Texas except A, burial expenses up to $10,000, B, training for a new job, C, unlimited medical bills, or D, loss of income payments. So not covered by workers' compensation, but covered by the state of Texas is B, training for a new job. And number 10, generally to receive compensation for work-related injury, a claim must be filed by the injured employee within A, 1 week of the date of the injury, B, 1 year of the date of the injury, C, 1 year of the date the disability ends, or D, 2 years of the date that the disability ends. In this case, it's going to be B, 1 year of the date of the injury. Number 11, under workers' compensation law, income benefits may not be paid for an injury unless the injury results in disability that lasts longer than A, 48 hours, B, 1 week, C, 1 month, or D, 1 year. So they will begin after the first week is completed on day 8. So B, 1 week is the correct answer here. Number 12, which of the following statements regarding workers' compensation insurance is not correct? A, all employers domiciled in Texas are required to obtain workers' compensation insurance for their employees. B, workers' compensation provides compensation to employees who are injured on the job without regard to fault or negligence on the part of either the employer or the employee. C, workers' compensation protects the employer from its negligence. D, workers' compensation's primary advantage for the injured employee is that it provides a quick and certain means of compensation. All right, so number 12, this is going to be A, because this is an elective law in the state of Texas, the only state in the country where it is still elective. Number 13, which of the following is not an injury that would be covered under workers' compensation, by workers' compensation? A, workers that are injured when a hydraulic lift collapses. B, an injury that occurs when an employee slips on a wet floor while changing clothes in the employee locker room. C, an accident that occurs while an employee is driving a forklift from a truck to the warehouse. Or D, an intoxicated employee cutting himself with an electric saw. Because of the intoxication, D would not be an injury that would be covered by workers' compensation. Number 14, an employee covered by workers' compensation is entitled to all the following healthcare services for an injury except what? A, cosmetic surgery solely for aesthetic reasons. B, physical rehabilitation. C, hospital care. D, first aid. A, cosmetic surgery for aesthetic reasons will not be able to be covered under workers' compensation. Number 15, what is the workers' compensation burial benefit for a worker killed on the job? A, $5,000, B, $6,000, C, $7,500, or D, $10,000. So the maximum benefit for burial is going to be $10,000 or the actual cost, whichever is lesser. Number 16, an employer must report an injury to the insurer within how many days of the employee's report of the injury? A, 5 days, B, 8 days, C, 15 days, or D, 30 days. For number 16, this is going to be B, 8 days. Number 17, the length of time for which an injured employee will receive compensation, workers' compensation benefits depends on which of the following factors. A, the employee's average weekly earnings. B, the nature of the injury. C, the employer's payroll. Or D, whether the employee has any dependents. So the length of time is always going to depend on the nature of the injury, B. And number 18, which of the following is not a common law defense available for injury to an employee? A, the fellow servant rule, B, contributory negligence, C, an act of God, or D, assumption of risk. So of those listed, 3 are common law defenses and 1 is not. The one that is not is C, an act of God. And that ends our workers' compensation section.